You think you are a person, but you are a river. This is a confusion of such staggering impact, the biggest of your life, in fact, and the prime mistake of our entire species. It causes a catastrophic state of dissociation. I don't wish to exaggerate the profundity of this error. However, such a feat is in fact hard to imagine. For, if you really are one thing, but proceed through life as if you were something else entirely, this means your perception of what you are fundamentally is based on a mistake. And this is a circumstance which must result in utter confusion. And it has. Welcome to the Wild Garden of Enlightenment course on awakening. I'm Tobin Blake, and I'd like to first point out that today's Dharma is based on ancient Taoist philosophy, which is known as Wu Wei. I've adapted this teaching for our course into a practice you can use in everyday life. It is not just something to think about, but something to put into use. And by doing so, the intent is actually to reshape the way you live and perceive the world, and your life within the world. Wu Wei might simply be defined as effortless action, living as acceptance, non-resistance, or flow. In a sense, Wu Wei is an actionless direction of living centered in being itself, and as such, it reflects the state of liberation from the ego, which itself might be defined as a state of restricted perception dedicated to the religion of clinging itself. In contrast, the practice of Wu Wei emphasizes not clinging or attempting to forcibly direct experience. It is a flow state which connects and extends itself, its being, without restriction or judgment. Wu Wei does not hold back, and while it can distinguish the objects that populate our world, it does not view them as separate from one's own self. They are rather a part of shared consciousness, reflections of a deeper mind. The image of the river has been used widely in Taoist traditions because rivers are in fact powerful entities. What appears to us as a river is in fact something unnameable in truth. Even so, in the lives of humans, the river serves a number of major functions. It gives us water and food to sustain our physical lives, to cleanse and cool our bodies, and to carry us from point to point, for example. Rivers are also teachers. The sound and sight of a flowing river can open the mind to presence, and by doing so, reveal the cracks that lie between the dense world of animate space and the subtler dimensions, which our judgment ordinarily obstructs. Yet, beneath our surface, human beings are rivers too. We are just rivers in a different form. The majority of us, however, remain completely blind to this reality. We stumble through life in a sort of numb, mindless stupor, only half conscious at best, learning a lot but understanding nothing, swept up in endless concerns that don't, in fact, matter, seeking and struggling, quarreling and manipulating, plotting, doing, thinking, dreaming, and ultimately what I call pushing and pulling. Words you're going to get to know very well today. Our concern here is very simple. How can we live our lives in a way that is more closely in line with our deeper nature, our identity as flowing creative entities that we actually are? Not later, in some imaginary point in the future, but today, right where you are, standing in the very shoes of your own life as they fit or don't fit, within this very instant. In a way, this shift is deceptively simple. Only our own mind pushes back. Given this, how can we loosen our tight grip on the restricted egoic prison and shake this spell we found ourselves caught up in? In this spirit, I present to you the way of the river. Picture a river, broad and steady, flowing across the land. It snakes along, never questioning its course, making no demands on the objects and conditions it meets along its way. Animals, plants, and human beings drink from it. They absorb its abundance, ride its waters, sit worshipfully at its banks, and trail alongside it, utilizing the path the river has patiently carved across the terrain for ages unknown. If you understand the essential nature of the river and how it moves, you may also glean how profoundly different human beings are. The river is a flow, always perfectly itself, flexible and free. It doesn't judge a rock or even a mountain in its path. It slides across the earth, goes round beneath and over gigantic boulders, fills up cracks and crevices, and even entire valleys. The river finds its way through forests and across mountains, spewing from cliff sides. Even where the river meets a dam, its path still cannot be stopped. Stalled, perhaps, but this is senseless talk to the river itself. It has no notion of time, and so no notion of delay. At the dam, it seeps through soil, or simply circles without complaint, awaiting its eventual release. Or perhaps it will evaporate into the air, an invisible river taking wing, riding the sky's subtler currents until it cycles back to earth. In short, the river moves without judgment. On the other hand, where rivers are continuous flow, human beings are coordinated sticking points. Where the river moves gracefully through its life cycles, people perceive the world from tiny, isolated grains of consciousness. Our eyes cannot penetrate the world's real depths, nor can our minds grasp anything beyond the flimsy texture of events, sights, sounds, thoughts, and feelings. We see ourselves as cut off, temporary creatures, trapped in time and the sack of bones we call the body. This is not real seeing. In fact, it amounts to restriction of seeing. By focusing on the surface of things, our vision stops short and we fail to look deeper. Consider how many of us live out our lives. As we develop, we learn a wide swath of values and rules for what is desirable and good, quote unquote, as opposed to, well, the opposite of desirable and good. The list is extremely detailed and quite extensive, and it varies a bit from culture to culture, family to family, as well as, of course, individual to individual. With these standards firmly in place, we go about life judging everything we encounter that sticks out enough to warrant our little effort, pushing and pulling our way through life. Those things that don't suit you, you mentally slash, emotionally reject, or sometimes even physically shove away. And of course, those things that interest or attract you, you open up to, invite closer, and maybe even grasp and immediately reel in. Most of the time, you may not even be aware of this process because it's such a near constant activity, and quite often it's a subtle motion. Some people or behaviors, for instance, simply annoy you, or others you quote-unquote like or approve. This is a crude example of pushing and pulling. Whether it happens consciously or not, we are constantly pushing and pulling at everything, person, thought, feeling, circumstance, and idea that catches our attention, whether a little or a lot. And it is this action that disrupts our flow and throws us out of sync with our deeper identity as the river. While this lasts, self-realization must be impossible. Pushing and pulling represents the ego's process of continuous judgment, which it uses to bolster the idea of itself as a separate entity. It does this by emphasizing differences between it and everything else. Through unremitting judgment, the unbroken ocean of consciousness is viewed as if it were shattered into countless tiny fragments. This is the real problem with judgment. It is not a moral issue at all, but a tactic for maintaining the illusion of a separate identity. Now, to be clear, to intentionally turn your efforts towards the state of non-judgment does not mean you should become an emotionless piece of cardboard cut out to look like a person. Ironically, the personality is not diminished during the process of true awakening. Rather, it is delicately refined, with the hardness of the ego's lines becoming gradually more subtle. If you think you must become an empty, stiff shell of a person in order to awaken, you should read the writings of Rumi and Dogen, the great Zen master, or study Alan Watts, Ram Dass, Paramahansa Yogananda, the Dalai Lama, and Wayne Dyer. These people could hardly be called hollow or withdrawn. Entering the Great Way, the mind and heart are naturally liberated from societal restrictions and the associated fears that hold so many of us back. We begin to understand ourselves as abstract beings and by our very nature, expressive. Wu Wei does not push or pull, but it acknowledges a deeper beauty in everything and makes that subtlety manifest in its going. The movement of the sacred water and the subtle reflections of the riverbed's architecture. It connects when and where connections occur, without reserve or judgment, and moves to the rhythm of the unfolding terrain. People will come and go in your life, and some may even set up camp. As the river, either will be okay with you. Your life circumstances will evolve, and you'll let them do so. You'll still make up goals, most likely, because that's what we human beings are programmed to do. But you'll hold them more lightly, for you'll realize it's all a passing scene. So your grip will not be so rigid, and you'll let go more easily when the time comes for letting go. You'll realize the important things will always be a part of you, because that's exactly what they are. Elements of your own essence, reflected in a world of light and shadow, dancing as endless forms upon an invisible wall you cannot even see, but you know somehow must be there. You can live just this way, starting today and extending forward throughout time. This might at first seem like an impossible challenge, but if you view it as an ongoing practice, it won't take long before you'll start to understand just how beautiful and powerful this simple exercise really is. And so you'll simply keep going, deeper into it, the mystery unfolding with every step. By and by, it will reshape your life and open your eyes to fresh, subtler fields of being. Even when you make mistakes and get caught up in some melodrama, you'll catch yourself and you'll just laugh. Because mistakes are nothing now, just a part of the flow. You release everything. Don Juan, the Yaqui Indian sorcerer I've mentioned before, perhaps said it best when he told Carlos Castaneda, "For me, there is only the traveling on paths that have a heart, on any path that may have heart. There I travel, and the only worthwhile challenge is to traverse its full length. And there I travel, looking, breathlessly." Perhaps I should make clear, Wu Wei, flow, the art of not pushing and not pulling, rests upon the realization that you don't always know good from bad, or what is helpful from what might make things worse. In short, we must train ourselves steadfastly to remember that we cannot ever say with certainty what's best in any situation. I once gave a talk at a Unity Center in which I discussed this very thing. I pointed out that even when a person is suffering horribly, sometimes this may be exactly what they needed in order to change. For instance, it's well known that oftentimes an addict may need to hit rock bottom, the depths of despair, before there is any hope for recovery. We can't force another person to heal, nor to realize that they are their own biggest problem, digging their own hole, in fact. It doesn't always help to pull someone out either, if they are going to immediately start digging a new hole. Ultimately, they have to realize what they're doing. They have to become conscious, in other words. So, even in the most extreme situations, we don't always know what's best. And in fact, we rarely do. However, there is a wisdom within us that does know. Letting go is learning to trust that wisdom, and also trust that if there is something you need to do, it'll unfold naturally in the course of your own flow. So now, with all these points in place, I'd like to invite you to begin your new life right now. This week, practice the way of the river simply by being mindful of the tendency to push and pull. Our human game is to judge all things we encounter in our life path, bad or good, and to allow ourselves to be attracted or repelled by them, and thus dropped into a sort of cosmic pinball machine, getting slapped around. Not so much, notably here, by the objects, personalities, and situations we encounter, as by our reactions to them. We've been walking through the world locked and loaded, day in and out, pushing and pulling at everything that comes into our awareness. It is an exhausting way to live. And now we are consciously choosing a different path. We should also recognize that determination comes first. That is the first step, while mastery is a mere concept, an aspect of the pathless path. As such, it is not a set point in the path, but a lovely dance we shape as we travel. So if you really want to make this happen, first you will need to set a clear intention to practice every day. Each morning, first thing, as well as all throughout the day, you will also need to recommit yourself to this dance, this flow. It is a commitment to non-judgment, acceptance, flow, and presence. These are central guidelines. Write them down on a piece of paper and tape it somewhere you'll see it often. Of course, there will still be many times when you'll forget the way of the river, and other moments when your ego rebels and intentionally lashes out. This is normal, and it's fine. The trick is simply to catch it happening, learn to witness it, and whenever you come back to your senses, to reconnect and recommit to the practice. Watch your mind and your emotions as you move through the day flowing. Watch for those sticking points, the sharp corners where you get stuck. Challenge those. Start with the minor but obvious ones, the things that nag you about other people in your life, for instance, or little things you insist have to be done your way. As you identify these objects, try loosening your grip and just let things and people be as they are, instead of trying to wrestle them into obedience. Let go and see if you can sense a little clean space of calm, a dropping away of tension. And as the little things get easier to manage, see if you can release your judgment surrounding some of the bigger obstacles in your path. Try to stop reacting to them. If you are unable to change some unpleasant or stressful situation, accept it instead. Accept the circumstance. And if you must act, do so from a place of inner calm, as best you are able. Finally, the same goes for all the things you think you want or need. This is a tough one. You don't have to make any big sacrifices along this path, which is an important topic in its own right, and we're going to discuss that in another Dharma later. But you should definitely question the purpose of all things that pull at you. These are just as much an obstacle to pure flow as those things you regard as negative situations. Ultimately, this path is about being conscious and present wherever it leads and whatever the sights along the way. You notice them and take them as sacred lessons sent from your deeper inner guide. Before we wrap up, if today's reflection resonated with you, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing the course with others. It's a simple way to keep this work free and accessible while helping these teachings find those who need them most. Thank you for being a part of this growth. Now, let's close out. Next time on the Wild Garden of Enlightenment, we are going to do a deep dive into the nature of time and why the idea of future enlightenment is one of the biggest traps we face. There is, in fact, no hope for freedom in the future. We must rather pick just one instant and, as I like to say, marry it, abandoning all forward-seeking momentum and all other concerns. This is a pivotal Dharma each one of us must get absolutely clear on. Until then, vaya con Dios, step by step, with presence and with love.